Okay, in the last video, we started talking about verbs. We started talking about lexical verbs, and we talked about the forms that lexical verbs can take. And in this video, I want to continue talking about lexical verbs. Give myself some room here. And we're going to talk about the types of lexical verbs. And the first type we're going to talk about is transitive. Okay? It's usually abbreviated in the dictionary as trans. And that's from a Latin word that means across. And we'll find out why it is. Okay, so let's put an example up here. I'm going to use the verb have. Okay, so John, where's this? John has, this is the first person, the third person singular present of have. Happens to be an irregular verb. John has what? John has a car. Okay, so in order to make the meaning of has clear, you need to have something. Okay, and generally what you have, so it turns out what you have, so John is the subject, he's the one we're talking about. The verb having something is what John is doing, and what he has is something we will call a direct object. Okay? And a direct object is a kind of a word called a complement because it completes, in this case, a verb complement, because it completes the meaning of the verb has. He has. He has a car. What does he have? He has a car. Okay, has really doesn't make has or have, the verb have, doesn't really make sense unless you have something. Okay, so we call that a direct object. That's what he has. And the word transitive comes from it. John has it, and it transfers the action of the sentence to the direct object. Okay, that's where the word comes from. I'm not sure that's an accurate description, but that's what we have anyway. So I'm going to skip the middle ones here a minute. Intransitive. Intransitive. Okay, and that's abbreviated in trans. Okay, and we're going to use, in this case, we're going to use laugh. And an intransitive word is one that does not need to transfer. So John does not need to transfer the action to someplace else. It's complete in and of itself. And really, not only is it complete in and of itself, but it really doesn't make sense to transfer the action. So John laughs. John is the one that's laughing. John is the subject. Laugh is the verb. And direct object. John laughs a dog. John laughs a car. Those are really make no sense at all. So this is a transitive verb, and this is one that's pretty much always transitive. I can't think of a transitive use of this one, or a transitive definition. Okay, so those are transitive and intransitive. Those are the extremes. It turns out that there's actually very few verbs that are always intransitive. There are a lot more verbs that are always transitive, but the majority of verbs fall into one of these two categories, and I'll call them B1 and B2. And these are verbs that can be either. Now there's a subtlety here. So the B1, I'm going to use the dictionary abbreviations, trans, in, trans, and this is a word like eat. And what I mean here is that with the same definition, you can either use it transitively, you can either transfer the action to a direct object or not with the same definition. So let's go back to John. and John eats. And we can stop there. We don't have to, we can use it intransitively and we can just quit right there. Or we can provide a little bit more information. John eats. And we'll give him I'm tongue-tied here. We will give him an entire meal. We'll give him lunch. So John eats lunch. Lunch is the direct object, and it's what John eats. Okay? In both cases, it's John doing the eating. In this case, we don't specify what he's eating. In this case, we do specify what he's eating. And we could put actual foods in there. We could eat, John eats fish. John eats pizza. Okay? In this case, well, like I said, we'll give him a whole meal. Now, the other way is we can go in the dictionary and we can find one definition that says trans, and we can find another definition that says intrans. Okay, and I'll mark them this way. Okay, so we've actually got two usually similar definition, and the one I'm going to use for our purposes here is open. So, let's do this one. Okay. We won't go to John directly this time. The door opens. Okay. In this case, the door is the subject, and what's happening? The door is opening. So the opening, what is actually opening? The door is what's actually opening. Okay, and we really, in this definition, we really don't care who's doing it, but the door is the subject, and what's happening? The door is opening. Similar to what John laughs. Who's laughing? John's laughing. Okay, we can also let's go get John again. Drag him back over to the video. John opens. You can see where this is going. The door. Okay, in this case, John is the subject, and he's transferring the action to the door. He's opening the door. So what's opening? In this case, it's still a door that's opening, but it's the door as direct object that's opening, not the door as subject. So the transitive form would be John opens the door. The intransitive form would be the door opens, where the opening goes back to the subject. Okay? And that's fairly common. And this is usually what happens. In the transitive form, you're transferring the action to the direct object, and it's direct object that's being opened. And in the intransitive form, it's the subject that's receiving the action. Okay, now let's go to the fourth one. And the technical term of this fourth category, is copular. The popular term, and actually might tell us more, is it's sometimes called a linking verb. Okay, and the big one is be. This is far and away the most popular linking verb. Okay, and what this one is, it's kind of a linguistic equation, okay, or equal sign. Okay, so it's I guess let's put an example up. So we'll go back to John again. We're working him hard today. John is an engineer. Okay? So, now, in these previous one, the car, the lunch, the door, all gave us more information about what was being had, what was being eaten, or what was being opened. So they all completed the thought of the verb. So these are all verbal complements. In this case, with a linking verb, what you're going back is you're completing the thought of the subject. You're giving more information about the subject. Okay, John is an engineer, so now we know more about John. Okay, and the we can also, this happens to be a noun phrase. We can also do this, and we'll talk a lot more about these later, but we can also use it with adjectives. So John is happy. He likes being an engineer. Okay? And again, it's not is that's happy, it's John that's happy. Okay? So it goes back to there. So these are the copulars. And they seem, feel, they generally describe states, okay, rather than actions, although they do describe changing states. So become, go can be used as a linking verb and in some definitions. Okay, so now I want to say one more thing about lexical verbs and why they're so important. And it's one of the very few, and we'll talk more about this later, but it's one of the very few 100% rules in English. Okay? Every clause must contain a lexical verb. Okay, it's a 100% rule. I will put an exclamation point. Every clause must contain a lexical verb. So since every sentence must contain at least one clause, every sentence must contain a lexical verb. At least one. Okay? And we'll find out that a clause has to have one and only one. And if you have two clauses, so you can find, so if you go looking for the lexical verbs, you can tell how many clauses there are in a sentence. Okay? So, with that, I will stop here, and we'll stop talking about lexical verbs, and we'll come back and start talking about the grammatical verbs.